Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Jalen Brunson just agreed to a 4-year, $156.5 million extension. I'm about to tell you why it's not only one of the best contracts in basketball, it is one of the best in NBA history and sets the Knicks up for years of contention. Let's go.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, your favorite daily New York Knicks podcast. I wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. If you want to become an everydayer, be sure to subscribe and hit that notifications bell to ensure you never miss an episode. Like, comment, leave a 5-star review, all that good stuff. And be sure to do the same on your favorite audio podcast platform of choice so you always have us with you on the go. I'm Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster today, maybe just your favorite Jalen Brunson Jalen Brunson appreciator. I don't know if that made sense. I'm just going to keep rolling. It is currently 6 a.m. on a Saturday. I am on vacation, but we have to talk about this. Jalen Brunson agrees to a 4-year, $156.5 million extension. It has been rumored for weeks at this point that Jalen was going to take what amounts to a $113 million discount on paper. It has felt inevitable that he was going to do this, or close to inevitable. It's another thing to actually see it in writing. When the Woj bomb dropped, it hit a little bit different to find out this guy who is, I would say at this point, inarguably one of the top 12 players in the league, has a case for being one of the 5 best players on planet Earth, given his skill set, given his age, likely will be, barring some kind of traumatic injury over the entire course of this contract. I think it is absolutely fair to say it is the best contract in basketball by a substantial margin. And one of the, we'll get into this as we go along, but one of the best contracts in the history of the NBA. Here are the official numbers on it from Adrian Wojnarowski. He will make, after still being on a substantial discount this year, he will make $35 million or just under in 2025-26, just under $38 million for 2026-27, $40.5 million for 2027-28, and then a $43 million player option in 2028-29. And then at that point, he will be eligible on his next contract for either a 4-year, $323 million deal that would pay him $81 million a season, or if he wants to wait until 2029, a 5-year, $418 million deal that would pay him $83.6 million a year. There was a reason Woj used the phrase unprecedented, right? You do not see NBA players pass up money very often. And that is not to pick on NBA players. They shouldn't pass up money. This is millions and millions of dollars. And for the best players in the league, those contracts, however obscene they are, and you hear $60+ million a year, all any of us can think is like, that is crazy to play a game. It is always a discount because of the limits of max contracts. None of these guys get what they are worth, right? LeBron in his prime should have made $100+ million a year purely for basketball revenue that he generates. He has never gotten that because of the CBA, because of the rules guiding how much one player can get to maintain competitive balance, to give teams a fair opportunity to build around those stars. Given that caveat, these guys should get every cent that they possibly can. And Jalen Brunson did not do that here. It is like, just put yourself in the guy's shoes, and the idea of passing up look, it was not a sure thing that he would get the 5 for 269 next year. Like, could he have suffered a traumatic injury? Could he have been in, God forbid, a car accident? Of course, those things could happen. And if you're Jalen Brunson, despite how big of a number that is, this is still generational money. You take out the taxes, you take out everything. He will be making something like $75 million over the next 4 years. If he is in any way smart with his money and knowing Jalen Brunson he's going to be, he will never have to worry about money again. His kids will never have to worry about money again. His grandkids, in all likelihood, will never have to worry about money again. That is life-changing. And yet it is still an extraordinary concession to say there was I'm going to put it at 98% chance, maybe if you want to be really conservative, 95% chance that is still, whatever way you want to phrase it, an extra $113 million he chose to forego. And even more than the financial implications, I always think about the egos in these situations, right? You have to have a healthy ego to be one of the great athletes in the world. And these guys generally, not these guys, everyone in that position, you want a contract that is commensurate with that. And for Jalen Brunson to see OG Anunoby, like, go get his bag this summer, get $220+ million and say, despite the fact that Anunoby, for as extraordinary of a defender as he is someone who is far more injury prone than Brunson, is someone who has never scored more than 17 points per game in a season, is someone who's only put in about 40 games worth of time equity on the Knicks. And that guy is going to make $70 million more than Jalen freaking Brunson, who we just watched put together a historic postseason, a historic run of games, 2 years in a row in the playoffs where he puts up 30 plus and looks like, again, 2 years in a row, one of the 5 best players on planet Earth. He's going to be fine with OG Anunoby making $70 million more than him? The answer is yes, because that is who Jalen Brunson is. And that is why I go back to the Mikal Bridges trade. And every time we look at that deal and we say, was it fair value? Was the 5 first-round picks plus the swaps just too much to give up for someone who's never going to make an all-star team? And it is why I didn't phrase it this way at the time, but I like to think it was part of my thinking why it was comparable and hopefully turns out better than the Paul George trade the Clippers made in 2019, because that was not a trade for Paul George when you're giving up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a million first-round picks. That was a trade for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. The Mikal Bridges trade, in some form or fashion, was a trade for Mikal Bridges and the continued happiness of Jalen Brunson and the willingness of Jalen Brunson to take a discount like this and to have the best contract in basketball, fresh off signing the best contract in basketball. Like, you can go. I was thinking back. I was like, all right, was there one in the last 20 years that was clearly better than this? And the only thing I could think of was Steph Curry's 4-year, $44 million rookie extension. That was a product certainly of Steph maybe taking a bit of a hometown discount, but also reflecting the reality that he was coming off a rookie contract that was plagued by ankle injuries and a chance that he was just not going to be a long-term NBA player because of that ankle and because of the long-term trajectory of that ankle. And instead, over 4 years, he goes on to win 2 MVPs, 2 championships, gives him the flexibility to sign Kevin Durant. Jalen Brunson did not have any of those caveats. He did not have a shaky injury history. And again, he would have had every right to hold out for more money. And the Knicks, at the end of the day, you are happily giving Jalen Brunson a 5-year, $269 million contract. Yes, it would have limited them substantially going forward. They would have had very little flexibility to change the framework of this team. And when you're already handicapped by not really having a future in the draft, team building options become extraordinarily limited. And this was a team that was, we'll see what they become next year, but especially after losing Isaiah Hartenstein, might have been destined to be very good and never quite good enough. And an era of Knicks basketball that should have looked just undeniably bright with nothing but positives going forward. There was a world where you could have spun that and said, hey, this is all going to be great. But given the position we were in, once we found out Brunson was that good, did the Knicks maximize their hand? Did they open the window as wide as they possibly could? And I think on the grander version of this contract signed a year later, you ultimately would have had to say like, no, they didn't. And like maybe given like how good things looked like they were going to be, this was going to go down as a disappointment. Instead, Jalen Brunson has in an act again, I'll use that term again, of unprecedented unselfishness. He has given the Knicks a legitimate 4-year window and possibly more than that to compete for a championship and have championship equity. I would say equal or greater than any team outside of Boston. And despite their relative cheap ways of late, maybe the Denver Nuggets, just because Jokic is that good, you could make an argument for the Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards, the Mavericks with Luka Doncic, if you want to say those guys are in a different tier of player than Brunson is. That's a fair argument. I don't know how big that gap is at this point. But what I go back to again is that Bridges trade and Jalen Brunson looking across the table, presumably at Leon Rose, and saying, "Hey, you do this for me. You get my friends in this building. We are all going to take less money," right? Dante DiVincenzo's on one of the best contracts in basketball. Josh Hart is on a fantastic contract. Mikal Bridges is also on one of the 5 to 10 best contracts in basketball. And I think when the time comes, he is going to take a contract that looks like maybe not one of the 5 to 10 best, but one of the 20 to 30 best contracts in basketball. I have some more thoughts on this before we wrap up. We're going to tell you just how much flexibility the Knicks gain, just how ridiculous this deal is, and why the future is now so incredibly bright for this Knicks team. We'll get into all that in just a sec on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And if you want to get in on the action this summer on the basketball side, I'm putting some money down on Team USA to win a gold medal. Really like the way they look. And then opening scrimmage against Team Canada, they're minus 550 favorites for the gold. You want to throw some money down on another team. I kind of like Serbia and France at plus 1,600. But again, Team USA, the heavy favorite. If you're interested in that, all you have to do is head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. All right, let's take a look at just how ridiculous this is for Jalen Brunson. So over the next 4 seasons, he is going to be, and keep in mind, this is for right now. There will be numerous extensions that push this number back even further. But for now, Jalen Brunson is set to be the 53rd highest paid player in basketball in 2024. The 33rd highest paid player in 2025, the 24th in 2026, and the 15th in 2027. So even given the fact that I would say the bulk of the guys, maybe not the bulk of the guys, but a substantial percentage of the guys who will ultimately be paid more than him have not even signed their next contract yet, or their extension is not officially kicked in yet, and therefore they're not listed on Basketball Reference, where I was looking at these rankings. There is no point in the life of this contract where he will be getting paid close to fair value. The last year would be the closest in 2027. Maybe at that point, if he falls off, which I would not really expect him to fall off dramatically in his age 31 season. If something happened, if he did, he would be getting paid fairly as the 15th best player in basketball. I think it's more likely we talk about him again as a not just through orange and blue glasses, as a consensus top 15 guy in the league at that point. The quote that I really stood out to me from Adrian Wojnarowski in this, he said, Brunson's study of championship organizations and franchise players, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Derek Jeter, gave him a blueprint for MVP. We're talking about our boy here, Jalen Brunson, MVP level players who structure contracts to give their teams the best chances at substantial title runs. That is what Brunson did here. The second apron is unforgiving. We have gotten into it on this show. It means no more mid-level exception. It essentially robs you of your ability to make trades in any significant way. This was going to be a scenario again if Jalen Brunson waits one more year where there would like the team would be the team. Like what they have right now, that would be it. And when you go 2 years down the pike and you say, hey, I want to keep Dante DiVincenzo, who is due for a raise. I want to keep Josh Hart. You don't even have to go that far into the future. You could say, I want to keep Julius Randle heading to next year. I want to make sure we don't lose him for nothing, which at this point, particularly with Isaiah Hartenstein gone, would just be a disaster for this Knicks franchise, right? There's really no other way to phrase the idea of losing Julius Randle and getting nothing back. Now, you hope Randle follows suit here, and even though he's not one of the Nova guys, he follows that path instead of the OG Anunoby path. And to be clear, none of this is going after OG. Like he should get every cent that he possibly can. But it does set a precedent where Randle might go that route and might say, hey, I am just going to take the most I can get right now. I'm going to take 4 for 181. And I'm going to lock in with this team and I'm going to be part of this future. And to be fair to Julius, like it is a little different with him versus Jalen, where Jalen is taking this knowing that the team is built around him and the contract is such a steal that there is not a conceivable world where the Knicks move off him. If you're Julius and you take a 4 for 181, you could potentially be traded. And I wonder if there's some world where the Knicks give him a limited or total no trade clause, and he maybe even takes even more of a discount because he wants to stay in New York and he wants the guarantee of staying in New York. The point is, you would not be able to keep this team together in any meaningful way. I mean, just look at the Denver Nuggets, who just gave up Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And that is a little bit different because it might have been a bit of cheapness on their owner's part, which whatever you want to say about James Dolan, there's a lot of not great stuff you could say about James Dolan. He has generally not been cheap with this team. So that would not be my concern. My concern would be something like what the Nuggets are doing looking forward, where they're saying, hey, KCP, we are not going to go over a certain number here because we value having flexibility going forward. And that is great. They are sacrificing championship equity the next 2 seasons at least for one of the top 10 players in the history of the league in Nikola Jokic, while Jalen Brunson, by taking this deal, like that is just not going to be an issue for him. This Knicks front office that has proven itself to be nothing less than brilliant in their ability to build a basketball team, just now has more chips to push in to continue doing that, to continue trying to get over the top. And we keep hearing, all right, New York's a destination now. New York's a destination now. We haven't seen that yet because they haven't really had an ability to go play in free agency. We've only seen it in regard to retaining their own players. But now there's a world, especially if Julius Randle does leave, where the Knicks can dip a toe into free agency, or they can dip a toe into the buyout market and get someone to come here below value, just like everyone on this team does, and continue to just add guys that push that ticker up just a tiny bit more in terms of their ability to go win a championship. I talk about it on the show all this time, but when I first started covering this team, we were talking about Emmanuel Mudiay at point guard. We were talking about Alonzo Trier coming off the bench and playing some point guard. We were talking about Dennis Smith Jr. We were talking about my king then and forever, Frank Ntilikina, playing point guard. And we were always saying, all right, like when do the Knicks get that generational guy? And I am a optimist in some senses of the word. I never thought the Knicks were going to get someone like Jalen Brunson, who is just a generational superstar, because that was not my history following this team starting in 2003. And in fans who've done this way longer than I have, for most of you, except for those of you old enough to have seen the 70 Knicks, like in your lifetime, like it was Bernard King, it was Patrick Ewing, it was Carmelo Anthony. Those were 3 times in 45 years where the Knicks had someone who was a true blue superstar. Since Clyde Frazier left the team in 1977, like that was the run for 4 decades for some people, for their entire lives. Like there is just never a guarantee that you are going to get someone like this, right? It takes good fortune at a certain level, and for it to be Jalen Brunson, instead of it being the Knicks finally winning the lottery one year and getting a Wembanyama or getting a Cooper Flag, for it being the guy who was a second-round pick who came off the bench the first 3 years of his career, who the Dallas Mavericks stupidly did not want to give 4 years, $55 million to. You want to talk about this being an all-time contract? That was an all-time contract. There is luck. There was an incredible amount of luck involved with Brunson wanting to be a Knick and turning into the guy that he has. And it was luck that always seemed to happen to other teams that were not named the New York Knicks. And it's not just Jalen Brunson. It is an entire team of guys around him that are more than the sum of their parts, that play the right way. And this deal for Jalen was the greatest representative of that yet. That there is a special culture here, and when culture as a term is thrown around in the NBA, more often than not, it is just that. And at the end of the day, players talk the talk. They do not, when push comes to shove, walk the walk. And again, I feel the need to keep saying this caveat, like they shouldn't walk the walk more often than not, because it is just not a reasonable expectation. Jalen Brunson did. He showed he cares about winning as much as any player in this league, and the Knicks are set up to win as much as any team in this league going forward. And that is an incredible combination. Final thought, and we'll get into more of this when Alex and I talk about it for Monday's show. But those two deals going forward in 2028, the 4 for $323 or the 5 for $418. First of all, I would say, I think, again, I would be surprised if Jalen is signing a 5 for $418 heading into his age 33 season. I think even though the Knicks owe him at this point, and you couldn't blame them for it, that just rings unlikely to me, that if Leon Rose is still running this team and this front office and this infrastructure is still intact, that they are going to pay Jalen at his size that amount of money, even if it is a make right type of deal. I think the 4 for $323 version is more realistic, but it wouldn't shock me if even at that number, Jalen agrees to another discount, and that contract looks like something more like 4 for $280, which again is an obscene amount of money. With the way the salary cap will be positioned at that point, it would be another example of Jalen taking an extraordinary discount, and especially if the Knicks have not yet won a championship at that point, just cropping this window up a little bit further. This was both a risk and a safe move from Jalen Brunson, because you always think back to what happened to Isaiah Thomas on the Boston Celtics, where he maybe could have had a deal like this, and then he gets hurt, and instead of having generational wealth, he's been forced to take minimum deal after minimum deal after being out of the NBA for years and years and years. I think Jalen Brunson is ultimately a better player. He is built differently. Physically, I'm not talking about that dog. He is physically built different. He's stouter. He is stronger, but he is a guy who plays a physical game and takes more charges than anyone else in this league, is on the ground on offense about as much as anyone else in the league. Like it is a safeguard taking this move, in that the money is there and he has it, and no one can take it away from him. It's also a risk in that I don't know if that next contract is going to be $323 million. Do I think the Knicks are going to quote unquote take care of him in some form or fashion, given the sacrifice, given that his agent is Leon Rose's son? Yes, I would be shocked if the Knicks screwed over Jalen Brunson on the other end of this. But I just want to make clear, one, again, that there is risk here. There's also logic for him just taking the money that is there. And I have a feeling that next contract is going to be somewhere down the middle between a make right and, hey, let's keep winning. For now, Jalen Brunson has cemented himself as the king of New York, and where he ranks in that all-time New York athlete conversation is something I'm hoping whether it's the host or maybe as a returning guest to talk to you about on this podcast 10, 15 years down the road, or maybe not 15, but let's just say 10 years down the road, when Jalen Brunson is retiring. And it wouldn't shock me if there's a Mount Rushmore of certainly Knicks. He'll be on there. there's a Mount Rushmore of New York athletes. There's a world where a championship or two, he will be on there. This is hero stuff. And again, the Knicks have not been that team. Jalen Brunson, with a whole lot of help, has made them that team. Can't wait to see what the future looks like. I hope all of you guys join us for it. Again, there will be much more on this. There'll be much more in the Knicks first Summer League game. Subscribe, hit that notifications bell. Talk to you very, very soon on Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.